Good morning and welcome to Cloud Cafe from 56-Bit. I'm Patrick Camilleri and today we are discussing the fascinating world of Amazon S3. Hello everyone, welcome back to this S3 deep dive series. Last time, in last episode, we spoke about S3. In general, we introduced some of the features it has, including tiering, allowing you to control costs and availability of your data on S3. Today, we're doing a bit of a deeper dive, a more hands-on approach of how you create the environment necessary to hold your data in S3. We'll talk about S3 buckets, how to create them, how to upload and download data from them, and how to ensure your data is secure. So let's dive right in. So your S3 bucket is like this fenced ground where you can put all your data, and that data never goes outside of that bucket. You decide where and how much security that bucket has. When you create a bucket, you need two main things: a special name, a unique name, and the region where the bucket will be created. So when you go in the S3 console, so first you log into the AWS Management Console, you go to the S3 console, and then there you have the Create Bucket button. Once you create it, you have the unique name that you have to set. Now when I say unique, that is unique throughout. No one can have the same name on another bucket. In any region, any AWS account, that name needs to be unique. The reason for this is that they place that name in the URL, in the address where you get your data. So obviously you cannot have it, anyone else cannot have the same name, otherwise you will end up with conflicts. Apart from the name, you also need to specify the region. Now the region in S3 means where your data resides physically. So if you're choosing Ireland, it will be saved in Ireland. Frankfurt will be saved in Frankfurt, etc. Doesn't mean that it will be saved in a single location in Ireland. So if you choose Ireland, you're saving your data by default in 3 separate physical locations inside the jurisdiction of Ireland. This allows you to control where your data is for legal purposes, for compliance purposes. And once you choose that name and the region, you press a button and your bucket is created instantaneously. Now, how do we upload and download data? Once your bucket is created, you click on that bucket. It will be empty, of course. Then you just need to drag and drop whatever data you want to save into it. And it will be saved. To download, it's as easy. You just go on that specific piece of data and you press the download button. Now the trick here is that you don't just do this manually from the management console, but you do it through your applications. Your applications can connect to S3 and download any data if they have the right permissions to do so. Programmers who create these applications, they use software development kits, specific pieces of software that allows them to, with a single line of code, download or upload data. But hold on, what about when you want to share this data with the rest of the world? So by default, S3 data is private, meaning only the AWS account who created that bucket will have access to that data inside it. That's the default. You can change that. You have full control over who and what data they can access inside the bucket. You can make it accessible to the public if you want, where no one needs to authenticate, they just have the URL, and voila, they can access the data. So how do you do this? There are different methodologies of how to protect your data. You don't have to do anything, let's be clear. By default, it is private. But if you want to amend those policies, which allow you to share specific data with specific other resources, you can. So for example, there is the bucket policy. This is a policy which you create in the bucket itself. So the data inside the bucket will follow that policy by default. This policy allows you to share with other AWS accounts, share data with the public, share data with specific users or specific applications. They are very, very powerful and totally in your control. Then there are access control lists. These are an older version of how to protect your data. In fact, AWS does not recommend we use them anymore. They've been what we call deprecated, but in reality they're still supported, but they are not being encouraged to be used. So ACLs have a lot of power as well, but they're quite old. You should not use them basically. There is a way, in fact, of switching them off. So you force anyone using this bucket to not use ACLs. Another nice feature of buckets are special URLs. These URLs allow you to share specific pieces of data with anyone else by just sharing an address, a URL. This address will have a code inside it allowing the person who is using it to get that data for a specific time period. It is not infinite. You can set a time period when that URL expires. And you do not have to share it with the world, just that person who gets the URL has access to the data. Finally, another feature of S3 buckets are encryption. Now, encryption, there are two layers of encryption. There is encryption in transit, which means when you're moving data from your computer or your application to S3 and back and forth. That is a special encryption, and we use HTTPS for that, which is an encrypted version of HTTP. That is done by default. All S3 URLs will be encrypted with HTTPS. But what about your data? Your data is saved on hard disks, physical disks in different physical locations in a specific region, let's say Ireland. That data can also be encrypted when saved on those disks, just in case someone inside AWS decides to take them or something. Those will be encrypted and practically impossible to get back that data without the right permissions. This is called encryption at rest, and AWS uses a very strong military-grade encryption algorithm to do this, called AES 256. How do you create an encrypted bucket? Very simple. When you're creating it, or even after, you can just go and switch on encryption, and that's it. Now, very important to remember that if you switch on encryption after you have data in it, the bucket, the data that was already there will not be encrypted. You can go and encrypt it, but the default encryption will happen from when you switch on encryption onwards. Anything before, you have to do that manually. That wraps up this episode on getting started with S3. In the next episode, we will explore some advanced features that take your S3 experience to the next level. Until then, happy cloud computing! To stay connected and never miss a beat, be sure to follow our podcast channel for the latest episode. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn to know more about all the updates in cloud and to know more about our upcoming webinars and events.